Status, Jax? Ilara's voice cut through the tension, steady as the alloy hull enclosing them. He didn't look up, fingers dancing over holographic keys. Shields holding at 60%, but the gravitic shear is eating through them like acid. We've got maybe an hour before it punches a hole in the drive core. Lyra leaned forward, her braids slipping over one shoulder. The anomaly signature matches nothing in our databases. It's not a black hole, not a wormhole rift. It's unraveling. Like the fabric of reality is coming apart at the seams. Kale's humming stopped. He tilted his head, his multifaceted eyes catching the console lights in prismatic flashes. In Vexery tales, such tears come when the stars forget their wars. Peace too long and the void hungers. Ilara shot him a glance not unkind but firm. Superstition had no place here, not when humanity's expansion hinged on reason over relic. Yet his words lingered, echoing the Accord's shadow, the pact that ended interstellar conflicts among the core worlds, binding humans and allies in a fragile harmony. No more grand battles, no empires clashing. Just exploration, quiet progress. But now, adrift in the Perseus arm, that peace felt like a curse. Options, she said, rising to pace the bridge. Her boots thudded softly against the grated floor, each step a reminder of the ship's age, a relic from before the decline. Jax wiped sweat from his brow. We could vent plasma from the auxiliary thrusters, create a counterfield to stabilize the shear. Risky though. Might overload the core if the math's off by a decimal. Lyra shook her head. And if it fails? We're pulled in, scattered across dimensions. I suggest a probe first. Map the anomaly's edge, find a safe vector to slingshot out. Kale unfolded his long limbs, standing taller than the humans. Or we listen to the tear. Vexery senses detect echoes, whispers of old conflicts fading. Perhaps the anomaly feeds on absence. What if we provoke it? Ilara paused, the idea sparking against her caution. Provoke? The Accord forbade aggression even in defense. But survival wasn't war, it was adaptation. She nodded to Jax. Prep the plasma vent. Lyra launched the probe. Kale, tune your sensors to those whispers. If there's a pattern, we use it. The engineer grumbled but complied, his hands blurring into action. Alarms blared as the probe detached, a silver dart vanishing into the swirling chaos on the view screen. Minutes stretched, the bridge air thickening with recycled oxygen and unspoken doubts. Ilara felt the weight of command, the lives tethered to her choices. Not just this crew but the colonies waiting for their report, the fragile web of peace they'd all sworn to uphold. The probe's feed crackled in, distorted images of fracturing space. Tendrils of nothingness coiling like smoke, devouring light. Then, a surge, the anomaly lashed out, swallowing the probe whole. Jax cursed, slamming a fist on his console. Lost it. And the shear's accelerating. Vent now or we're done. Ilara's jaw tightened. Do it. Jax initiated the sequence. Blue fire erupted from the thrusters, a defiant plume against the void. For a heartbeat, the ship shuddered, the view screen stabilizing as the counterfield took hold. Cheers rose, brief and ragged. But then the alarm screamed anew. The core temperature spiked, red warnings flooding the displays. Jax's face paled. It's backfiring. The anomaly's absorbing the plasma, growing stronger. Lyra's voice was a whisper. It's adapting. Like it's learning from us. Kale's eyes widened, his hum returning, urgent now. The whispers, they're louder. Demanding. The void remembers war, Captain. Our peace starves it. Ilara stared at the screen, the anomaly pulsing like a wound in the stars. The plan had failed, the risk blooming into catastrophe. They had an hour, no less. And in that shrinking window, humanity's grit would have to find a way to fight without breaking the vow that defined them. The low hum of the ship's engines thrummed through the deck plating, a constant reminder that they were running on fumes. Ilara gripped the console, her knuckles white against the worn synth leather. The view screen flickered with static, showing nothing but the endless void streaked by the warp trail of their pursuers, 3 sleek Krell interceptors, closing the gap like predators scenting blood. Jax's holographic form flickered beside her. His avatar a stylized human silhouette with glowing blue lines tracing circuits across his face. "They're gaining, Captain," Jack said, his voice calm but edged with that synthetic wit he couldn't quite suppress. "At this rate we'll be confetti in about 17 minutes. Any brilliant human ideas, or should I start drafting our epitaph?" Elara shot him a glare, though her lips twitched. Brave didn't mean fearless, it meant pushing through the knot in her gut. "Ideas? Yeah. We improvise. Scan for debris fields or anything we can use as cover." She tapped the NAV panel, pulling up the sector map. The Krell weren't after territory this time. They wanted the data core she'd salvaged from the old human outpost, the one whispering about why the stars were dimming. Humanity had walked away from the Great War cycles ago, declaring peace with the galaxy, but now the universe seemed to be unraveling in response, black holes blooming where none should, entire systems winking out. Her crew, her and Jack's, really, with Zor still in cryo after that last skirmish, were the last thread holding onto the truth. Zor stirred in the medbay feed, his tentacled form uncoiling slowly as the thaw protocols kicked in. The alien engineer from the fringe worlds was cautious to a fault, always calculating odds before a single move. His voice crackled over the intercom, gravelly and precise. "Elara vital stable. But if we don't reroute power soon, the cryopod drains us dry. We're at 23% reserves." She nodded to the empty air. "Copy that. Jax, divert auxiliary to engines. Wake Zor fully, we need his tentacles on this." The AI complied without argument, though his hologram shimmered in mock offense. "Rerouting. And here I thought I was indispensable. Don't worry, I'll pretend to sulk later." The ship lurched as the Krell fired a warning shot, a plasma lance grazing their shields. Alarms blared, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. Elara's heart hammered, but she forced steady breaths, fingers flying across controls. They weren't fighters. The Declination Pact had stripped humanity of its war fleets, leaving relics like this scout vessel. But grit? That they had in spades. Zor burst onto the bridge moments later, his 4 arms already clutching tools, iridescent skin rippling with stress. "Plan?" he demanded, eyes, plural, 6 of them, darting to the view screen. "Hide and strike," Elara said, pointing to a blinking anomaly on the map. "That asteroid cluster ahead. Dense enough for ECM interference. We slingshot through, drop a decoy probe rigged with the spare fusion cell. Make him think we've blown our drive." Jax chimed in. "Clever. Risky but clever. Probe's got a 40% chance of fooling their scanners. I'll preload it with ghost signatures. Make it look like we're limping away." Zor hesitated, one tentacle twitching. "And if they see through it? We have no weapons beyond the mining lasers." "Then we run like hell," Elara replied, her voice firm. "Together." She met his gaze, and after a beat, he nodded, diving into the engineering station. The ship banked hard, thrusters flaring as they plunged toward the asteroids. Jagged rocks loomed, spinning lazily in the starlight, a graveyard of forgotten halls from the pre-declination mining boom. The maneuver was tight. Elara felt the G-forces press her into the seat, sweat beading on her brow. Jax narrated the chase with dry commentary, Interceptor 1 firing, shields holding at 62%, close shave, while Zor's arms blurred, welding the probe's casing. They launched at mid-spin, the asteroid field erupting into a chaos of sensor ghosts as the decoy ignited its mock drive plume. For a heartbeat, the Krell vessels hesitated, veering toward the false trail. Elara exhaled, punching coordinates for the far side of the field. But then, a sharp ping, lead interceptor breaking off, sensors piercing the veil. Was onto them. "Damn," Zor muttered, sealing the last panel. "They adapt too fast." "Not fast enough," Elara growled. She flipped the ship inverted, using the mining laser to vaporize a small asteroid in their path. The debris cloud bloomed, a shimmering veil of ionized rock that scrambled the Krell's targeting. Alarms wailed as fragments pinged the hull, but they broke free, engines straining toward open space. The lead ship fired blindly, a bolt shearing off their starboard array. Sparks flew, Jax's hologram stuttered. "Minor damage. But we're blind on that side now. And fuel's dipping to 12%. Elara's jaw set. They'd bought time, but the cost was mounting. The array meant no more precise jumps, and without it, the next warp could tear them apart. Zor slumped slightly, his caution vindicated in the dimming lights. We cannot keep this up. The core's data, it points to something worse ahead. Systems failing, not just ours. She didn't argue. The universe was declining, all right, and they were racing to prove why humanity's refusal to war might be the only thing left to save it. But first, the dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the control deck, casting long shadows that danced like uneasy specters over the consoles. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. She'd always been the steady one, the anchor in the storm, but even she felt the pull of doubt now as the ship's alarms wailed a monotonous dirge. Beside her, Engineer Marco Ruiz hunched over a diagnostic panel, his fingers flying across the holographic display, sweat beading on his furrowed brow. "It's the core stabilizer," he muttered, voice rough from hours of shouting over the noise. "The quantum flux is tearing it apart from the inside. If we don't vent the excess in the next 10 minutes, we're looking at a cascade failure." Lieutenant Kira Novak paced the narrow walkway, her boots thudding softly against the grated floor. The scout, ever the impulsive spark in their tight-knit crew, slammed a fist into her palm. "Venting means losing half our fuel reserves. We're already limping toward the nebula, without that we'll drift like ghosts." Her eyes, sharp and defiant, flicked to Ilara. "We improvise. Humans always do." Ilara nodded, though her mind raced through the calculus of survival. The crew of the Endeavour, just the three of them now after the skirmish with the Vexery raiders, had pushed deeper into uncharted space than any human vessel before. What started as a routine survey mission had spiraled into a desperate evasion when the alien collective mistook their probe for a weapon. No grand war, just a misunderstanding amplified by the void's silence. But the real threat wasn't the Vexery, it was the failing drive they jury-rigged from scavenged parts. One wrong move, and the Endeavour would become another relic swallowed by the stars. "Options?" Ilara said, her voice cutting through the hum of failing systems. She rose, steadying herself against the ship's subtle tremor. The viewport ahead showed the swirling edge of the Orion Nebula, a colossal birthplace of stars that now loomed like a predator's maw. Beauty and danger intertwined, gases glowing in ethereal blues and violets hiding gravitational anomalies that could shred hulls like paper. Marco straightened, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. The wiry engineer, with his quick wit buried under layers of pragmatism, tapped a schematic into the air. "Plan A, vent now, pray the nebula's magnetic fields recharge us. Risky, could fry the secondary coils." He paused, glancing at Kira. "Plan B, your crazy idea. Reroute power through the auxiliary thrusters. Use the nebula's plasma to induce a controlled surge. Basically, surf the storm." Kira grinned, a flash of teeth in the low light. "Surfing saved my ass on Titan. Come on, Cap. We're not dying out here because some alien scrap heap couldn't handle a little human grit." Ilara waited, the weight of command pressing like the G-forces they'd endured weeks ago. The Vexery were gone, scattered by their evasive maneuvers, but the cost lingered, comms blacked out, supplies dwindling, and now this. Losing the ship meant more than their lives. It meant humanity's foothold in the frontier shrinking, another tale of caution whispered in Soul's halls. But surrender wasn't in their blood. "Do it," she decided. Marco prepped the reroute. "Kira, get to the engine bay, manual overrides if the automatics glitch." As they moved, the ship groaned, a deep vibration rattling through the deck plates. Marco's hands blurred over the controls, splicing lines of code with the precision of a surgeon. Sparks jumped from a junction, singeing his sleeve, but he cursed under his breath and kept going. "Flux at 87%, he called. "Holding, barely." In the engine bay below, Kira wrestled with the access panel, her muscles straining against the warped metal. The air grew thick, acrid with ozone, as the core's hum escalated to a whine. She yanked a lever, forcing the plasma conduits to align. Through the intercom her voice crackled, "Thrusters hot. Give me the surge, Marco." Ilara monitored from the bridge, her heart pounding in sync with the alarms. The nebula filled the view now, tendrils of ionized gas reaching out like fingers. They plunged in, the ship bucking as electromagnetic winds buffeted the hull. Alarms screamed, hull integrity dropping, systems flickering, but Marco's voice broke through, reroute complete. Riding the wave. The Endeavour shuddered, then stabilized, the improvised surge flooding the stabilizers with raw energy. The whine softened to a purr, the lights steadying. They emerged from the nebula's heart, scarred but whole, the core humming with borrowed life. Elara exhaled, slumping back into her chair. Marco joined her, clapping Kira on the shoulder as the scout climbed up from below, face smudged with grease. "We made it," Kira said, breathless but triumphant. "But fuel's down to 20%. That lingering flux might chew through the relays by dawn cycle." The cost hung unspoken, closer to the edge with the Vexery's echoes still haunting their sensors. Yet in that moment, amid the nebula's fading glow, their bond felt unbreakable, a spark of human fire against the universe's cold expanse. Captain Elara Voss gripped the console, her knuckles white against the flickering red lights. The bridge of the Endurance hummed with the low growl of failing engines, each vibration a reminder that their escape from the nebula's core was slipping away. She glanced at Jax, her engineer, who was elbow-deep in a tangle of sparking conduits, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill seeping through the hull. "Talk to me, Jax. What's the damage?" Her voice cut through the alarms, steady but edged with the grit that had kept her crew alive through a dozen system failures. He yanked a wire free, sparks dancing like fireflies. "Plasma conduits are fried, nebulite corrosion ate through the seals. We push the engines now and we blow the core. Buy us time or we drift into the void." His hands moved with the precision of someone who jury-rigged starships from scrap since the colonies fell. Behind them, Lena, the navigator, hunched over her holographic map, fingers tracing erratic paths through the swirling gas clouds. Her cautious nature usually balanced Elara's boldness, but now her eyes darted, calculating odds that grew worse by the second. The nebula's magnetic storms are shifting. If we don't vector out in the next 5 minutes, we'll be pulled into the singularity fringe. No coming back from that. Elara nodded, her mind racing through options they'd already burned. The Endurance was a relic, a human-built hauler from the old expansion days, tough but no match for the universe's latest tantrum. They'd come here chasing rumors of stable wormholes, a way to reconnect scattered human outposts after the Great Decline, the war humanity had walked away from, leaving the stars to unravel without our endless conflicts. But the universe, it seemed, had taken our refusal as an invitation to chaos, wormholes collapsing, nebulae turning feral. "Jax, can we reroute auxiliary power to the thrusters?" Limp speed, just enough to break the pull. She leaned in, her breath fogging the console glass. He paused, wiping grease on his jumpsuit, his witty spark dimmed by exhaustion. "Auxiliaries got juice for one burst, maybe? But it'll strip the shields. One storm hit and we're ionized toast." He met her gaze, the unspoken weight between them. The crew of 12, the last hope for the Vega colony's refugees crammed in the hold. Lena's map beeped urgently, a red line snaking toward their position. "Storm inbound 2 minutes. Captain, we can't, we can." Elara straightened, her decision crystallizing. Human grit wasn't about miracles, it was about stacking the deck when the house cheated. "Jax, reroute it." "Lena, plot a slingshot trajectory off the next gas pocket. We ride the storm's edge, use its momentum." Jax dove back in, tools clanging. "You're insane. That's not flying, that's surfing a supernova. Better than drowning in it." Elara keyed the intercom. "All hands brace for hard maneuver. We're punching out." The ship groaned as power surged, thrusters flaring blue against the nebula's purple haze. Alarms wailed, but Elara held the yoke, feeling the pull like a giant's hand on her chest. Lena's voice cracked over the din, trajectory locked. "Hold on." The storm hit like a hammer, lightning arcing across the view screen, shaking the deck. Consoles sparked, and Jax cursed as a panel blew, singeing his arm. But the Endurance twisted, caught in the magnetic whip, slingshotting forward. Elara's arms burned from the strain, every jolt testing her resolve. They burst through, the nebula receding like a fading bruise. Cheers erupted from the crew, ragged and real. Jax slumped against the bulkhead, grinning through the pain. Told you it was insane. Worked though. Lena exhaled, updating the map. Clear vector to the outer rim. But shields are at 10%. One more like that and we're ghosts. Elara released the yoke, her hands trembling now that the rush faded. The cost lingered, Jax's burn would scar and the engines wouldn't take another hit. They'd bought time but the universe's decline pressed on, wormholes winking out like dying stars. Humanity had declined war but survival demanded we fight the void itself, one clever dodge at a time. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The void outside the viewport swirled with debris, jagged remnants of the asteroid belt they'd miscalculated, now a lethal storm battering the hull. Jax cursed under his breath, fingers flying over the auxiliary controls, rerouting power from life support to the shields. This isn't holding, Cap. We're leaking atmosphere in Sector 3. One more hit like that and we're venting crew into the black. Mira hovered behind them, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes darting between readouts. She was the cautious one, always double-checking trajectories, but even she had pushed for this shortcut through the belt to shave days off their diplomatic run to the core worlds. Now regret hung in the air thicker than the recycled oxygen. I told you the scans were incomplete, she muttered, voice tight. The gravitational anomalies masked the instability. We need to jettison the cargo pods for thrust. Elena shot her a glance, sharp but not unkind. Brave didn't mean reckless, it meant choices under fire. The cargo held vital supplies for the fringe colonies, medicine, seeds, tech that could tip the balance against the encroaching void swarm. Losing it meant dooming thousands, but staying meant dooming themselves. No. We adapt. Jax, what's our window to the clear lane? He wiped sweat from his brow, the witty spark in his eyes dimmed by fatigue. 5 minutes if we're lucky. But the swarm's picking up speed. Those bugs are drawn to our engines like moths to a porch light. The void swarm wasn't some mindless horde. Intelligence reports painted them as opportunistic scavengers, evolved from the galaxy's underbelly, stripping worlds bare when stars aligned wrong. Their latest push threatened the neutral zones, forcing the Galactic Concord to convene. Humanity's delegation, Elena's team, was racing to argue for unity, not the war the hawkish Krell factions demanded. But if they didn't survive this, words wouldn't matter. A shudder rocked the ship, lights flickering as a chunk of rock glanced off the port side. Elena's mind raced, piecing fragments of old Academy drills. The initial plan, skirt the belt, hail the colonies en route, had backfired spectacularly when the swarm's interference scrambled comms. No backup, no evac. Just them, 3 humans against the indifferent cosmos. Override the inertial dampeners, Elena ordered, her voice steady amid the chaos. Use the debris field to our advantage. Slingshot us through the densest part, let the rocks shield us while we burn hot. Jax paused, brow furrowing. That's suicide. The G-forces alone, do it. She met his gaze, the camaraderie forged in a dozen missions unspoken but ironclad. He nodded, hands moving with reluctant precision. Mira stepped forward, injecting her caution into action. I'll recalibrate the sensors for microbursts. By us, eyes in the storm. The ship groaned as engines roared to life, plunging into the maelstrom. Debris pinged like hail on a tin roof, each impact a reminder of the cost. Elena braced, heart pounding, as the viewport filled with tumbling shadows. One wrong twist, and they'd be just another wreck, humanity's voice silenced before it could echo in the halls of power. But in that moment, grit turned fear to fuel. They weren't declining war, they were fighting for a universe worth saving. As the slingshot peaked, a larger fragment loomed, unavoidable. Jax yanked the yoke, but it was too late. The collision alarms wailed, and the world tilted into darkness. When lights sputtered back, the ship listed, hull breached but intact. We made it, Mira whispered, scanning for vitals. But the engine sputtered, power critically low. The clear lane lay ahead, mocking them with its distance. The swarm's distant hum grew fainter, but the real threat lingered. Stranding here meant missing the summit, letting the Warhawks win by default. Elena pushed to her feet, resolve hardening. Patch what we can. "We're not done yet." Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Endurance's engines vibrating through her bones like a distant earthquake. The view screen flickered with static, revealing glimpses of the asteroid field's jagged chaos. Boulders the size of cities tumbling in lazy orbits, their surfaces pocked with craters from ancient impacts. Her crew, what was left of them, moved with the quiet efficiency born of desperation. Lieutenant Kai Ren, ever the cautious one, hunched over his console, fingers dancing across holographic displays as he plotted evasion vectors. Beside him, Dr. Mira Singh adjusted her neural implant, her witty sarcasms silenced by the weight of their dwindling oxygen reserves. "Impact in 30 seconds, Kai announced, his voice steady but laced with the strain of too many close calls. The rival salvage fleet, those opportunistic Krell scavengers, had herded them into this death trap, their boarding drones still clinging to the hull like metallic parasites. Ilara's mind raced, piecing together fragments of a plan. The Endurance wasn't built for this. She was a survey ship, not a war vessel, her ingenuity the only weapon left after the comms blackout. Mira straightened, her eyes sharp behind the glow of her scanner. "The field's magnetic anomalies could mask our signature. If we vent the auxiliary tanks, create a plasma bloom, it might blind their sensors long enough for a slingshot maneuver." She didn't wait for approval, her hands were already keying in the sequence, the risk implicit in every override. Ilara nodded, her brave resolve hardening into action. "Do it. Kai, align us with that big rock, use its gravity to whip us out." Alarms blared as the first drone burrowed deeper, sparks flying from a breached panel. She unstrapped, grabbing a toolkit, her boots magnetizing to the deck. No speeches, just the grit of survival. They had lost the forward bay to the initial skirmish, crewmates adrift in the void, their sacrifice a tangible scar on the ship's scarred plating. The vent fired, a brilliant flare erupting from the Endurance's side, illuminating the field in ethereal blue. Krell's signatures wavered on the tactical overlay, confusion rippling through their formation. Kai whooped softly, a rare crack in his caution, as the ship lurched into the slingshot, G-forces pressing them back. But the bloom backfired subtly, a microfracture in the hull widened, hissing atmosphere into space. Oxygen levels dipped another notch, the air growing thin with the metallic tang of recyclers straining. As they cleared the densest cluster, Ilara sealed the breach manually, her suit seals beating with frost. Mira patched in from engineering, her voice crackling. "We've bought time, but the Krell are adapting, rerouting their drones." The challenge wasn't just escape, it was the resource drain, each maneuver costing them the margin they couldn't afford. In the quiet aftermath, Ilara glanced at the memorial plaque for the lost, the universe's indifference etched in their names. They pressed on, camaraderie the glue holding their fragile triumph together, the stars ahead mocking their hard-won breath. The dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the bridge of the Endurance, casting long shadows that danced like specters over the consoles. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. She'd always been the steady one, the anchor in storms that had claimed lesser crews, but this was no storm. It was the unraveling of everything. "Status on the core breach?" she asked, her voice cutting through the hum of failing systems. No bark, just the quiet command that had kept her team alive through 3 system collapses. Lieutenant Kai Ren, ever the cautious engineer with his wire-rimmed glasses perpetually fogged from stress, wiped his brow and glanced at the holographic display. It pulsed red, a heartbeat of doom. "Containment holding at 30%, Captain. But the quantum flux is accelerating. If we don't vent the auxiliary plasma in the next 10 minutes, it'll chain react through the hull." Ilara nodded, her mind racing through the schematics she'd memorized a decade ago, back when humanity still dreamed of stars instead of survival. The universe had turned hostile after the decline, that moment when the great powers, human and alien alike, had collectively refused the endless wars, opting for isolation in a fragile peace. But peace had birthed neglect, and neglect had let the cosmic rifts open, voids that devoured worlds. Now here they were, the last human vessel limping through the edge of the Perseus arm, carrying the seed vault that might reboot civilization, if they could just reach the neutral zone. Options? She said, turning to Dr. Mira Solis, the xenobiologist whose witty barbs usually lighten the tension. Today Myra's dark eyes were sharp, no quips in sight. Mira leaned over her tablet, fingers flying. We could reroute power from life support. Buy time, but it'll drop oxygen to critical in an hour. Or, the alien artifact we salvaged from Epsilon Eridani. Its energy matrix might stabilize the flux, but it's untested. One wrong pulse and we're vapor. Kai shook his head, his caution flaring. That's suicide. We don't even know what it does, could accelerate the breach instead. The ship shuddered then, a deep groan echoing through the decks as another rift tendril clawed at the shields. Alarms wailed, sharp and insistent, like the universe itself protesting their defiance. Ilara felt the vibration in her bones, a reminder of the cost already paid. The colony ship lost, the crew down to skeletons. They weren't heroes, they were stubborn remnants, clinging to ingenuity because surrender wasn't in the human code. Prep both, Ilara decided, rising with the fluid grace of someone who'd faced worse. Kai, isolate the plasma vents. Mira, interface the artifact. Minimal power draw, diagnostic only. We adapt or we die. As they scrambled, the rift outside the viewport widened, a maw of swirling black laced with electric blue. It whispered promises of oblivion, the same void that had claimed the Krill Collective and the Vorath Empire when they tried to seal it with weapons. Humanity had declined war, choosing science over slaughter, but now the universe seemed to decline existence altogether. Kai muttered under his breath as he patched lines, his hands steady despite the sweat. This artifact, it's like trying to plug a black hole with hope. Mira shot him a half-smile, the first crack in her focus. Hope's what got us this far, Lieutenant. Humans don't win by being bigger, we win by being clever. Ilara watched them work, the camaraderie a quiet fire against the cold. But as the cores hummed deep into a growl, she wondered if clever would be enough this time. The neutral zone was still light years away, and the rifts were closing in, hungry for the last spark of human grit. The dim glow of the auxiliary console flickered across Jax's face as he hunched over the wiring, his fingers dancing like a pianist on the frayed cables. Sweat beaded on his forehead, not from the heat, though the failing life support was making the air thick and stale, but from the gnawing certainty that they were out of time. Elena paced the cramped bridge, her boots thudding softly against the grated floor, each step a reminder of the void pressing in from all sides. Mira sat cross-legged in the corner, her tablet balanced on her knees, eyes scanning readouts that painted a grim picture. The warp core's containment field was buckling, and the alien armada's signatures were closing in, a noose of plasma signatures tightening around their battered corvette. We reroute the secondary power grid to the shields, buy ourselves a few minutes, Jax muttered, his voice laced with that trademark sarcasm that hid the fear. He twisted a connector, sparks jumping like fireflies in the low gravity. Unless you want to invite them in for tea. Humans make the best host after all, polite to a fault. Elena stopped pacing, leaning against the bulkhead with arms crossed, her jaw set in that unyielding line that had carried them through a dozen skirmishes. No tea, Jax. Just survival. Mira, any chance those sensor ghosts are malfunctions? If the fleet's really that close, we're done. Myra's fingers paused on the tablet, her cautious nature making her double-check every datum before speaking. She adjusted her glasses, the lenses catching the console's blue hue. Not ghosts. Real as the hull breaches we're ignoring. But there's a pattern. Their formation's sloppy, like they're reacting to something internal. If we can jam their comms with that improvised emitter you rigged last cycle, Jax, it might fracture their coordination. The plan had seemed solid back in the engineering bay. Overload a salvaged buoy with human frequency bursts, the kind no xenotech could filter without frying their arrays. Humans had always excelled at turning scrap into salvation, a grit born from centuries of scraping by on a rock that fought back at every turn. But as Jax sealed the panel and Elena initiated the sequence, the corvette shuddered violently. Alarms wailed, a cacophony that drowned out Myra's sharp intake of breath. Backfire, Jax spat, slamming his fist against the console. The emitter wasn't jamming, the Armada's lead ship had adapted, bouncing the signal back as a targeted pulse. It ripped through their systems like a scalpel, severing the warp initiators and plunging the bridge into sporadic darkness. Elena grabbed the armrest of the captain's chair, steadying herself as the ship listed. Outside the viewport, the stars smeared into streaks, the pursuing vessels now mere shadows against the nebula's swirling reds. Mira scrambled to her feet, tablet clutched like a shield. Containment's at 40%. If we don't vent the excess plasma manually, it'll breach the core. But the suits are in the lower deck and with gravity fluctuating. Elena met their eyes, her voice steady amid the chaos. We suit up. Jax, you and Mira handle the vent, I'll keep us steady up here. No heroics, just get it done. There was no room for argument, only the raw camaraderie that had bound them since the Alliance's fall, when humanity's refusal to escalate the war had left them as outcasts in a universe unraveling thread by thread. Jax nodded, grabbing Myra's arm as they dashed for the access hatch. The corridor beyond was a labyrinth of sparking conduits and hissing leaks, the air growing colder with every meter. You know, he said between labored breaths, if we pull this off, I call dibs on naming the next patch job. Something poetic like, the universe's bad day. Mira shot him a wry glance, her caution yielding to a flicker of resolve. Focus, Jax. Poetic can wait until we're not exploding. As the hatch sealed behind them, Elena gripped the controls, the ship bucking under another enemy volley. The armada pressed closer, their weapons charging with an ominous hum that vibrated through the hull. She whispered to the empty bridge, "Hold together, old girl. Just a little longer." The cost was mounting, fuel reserves critically low, the nebula's radiation seeping through the weakened shields. But in that moment, with her crew fighting in the belly of the beast, Elena felt the spark of human tenacity ignite. They wouldn't go quietly, not while there was ingenuity left to burn. Captain Elara gripped the console, her knuckles white against the flickering holograph. The ship's alarms wailed in staccato bursts, syncing with the pounding in her temples. Outside the viewport, the nebulous tendrils clawed at the hull, each pulse of cosmic decay eating away at the reinforced alloy like acid on flesh. They had pushed too far into the void's heart, chasing the signal that promised salvation, a remnant energy source that could stabilize their failing warp core. But now the universe itself seemed to rebel, its fabric unraveling in jagged tears. "Status, Jax," she barked, not turning from the readouts. Her voice cut through the din, steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. The engineer wiped grime from his face with a rag that had seen better days, his wiry frame hunched over the auxiliary panel. Core's at 23% integrity. That last surge fried the secondary coils. If we don't vent the plasma buildup in the next 10, she'll blow us all to stardust. His words were clipped, laced with the grit of a man who jury-rigged half the ship with scavenged parts. No panic, just facts, Jax's way of keeping sane. Dr. Lena hovered nearby, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes darting between the nebulous swirling chaos and the biomonitors. Cautious to a fault, she'd argued against this dive from the start, her sharp mind always 3 steps ahead of disaster. The readings show accelerated entropy. It's not just the nebula, it's feeding on our emissions. We pull back now or the decay spreads to the crew's cellular level. I've seen it in the Sims, accelerated aging, organ failure. Elara nodded, jaw set. Brave didn't mean reckless, but turning back now meant dooming the colony ship trailing light years behind. 5,000 souls, counting on this Hail Mary. Options. Jack straightened, a spark of that unyielding human ingenuity flashing in his eyes. We improvise a containment field. Use the auxiliary thrusters to siphon the nebula's energy, reverse the flow. Risky as hell, could overload the mains. Lena's brow furrowed. And if it backfires? We're talking quantum cascade. The whole sector collapses. Better than sitting ducks. Jack shot back, his wit surfacing in the tension, a deflection, not a joke. Elara waited, the weight of command pressing like the G-forces from their erratic orbit. The nebula loomed larger, a maw of violet and black, whispering entropy's promise. Do it. Lena monitored the bioeffects. Keep us breathing. As Jax dove into the wiring, sparks flying from his tools, Elara strapped in, initiating the maneuver. The ship groaned, metal protesting as thrusters fired in reverse. Energy arced across the viewport, the nebula responding with a furious lash, a tendril slamming into the shields, dropping them to 40%. Alarms screamed louder. "Flow's building," Jax grunted, sweat soaking his jumpsuit. "Hold her steady, Cap." Lena's voice trembled slightly over the comm, crew vitals dipping, cellular decay starting. "We have minutes." The ship shuddered violently, a deep rumble vibrating through the deck. Ilara's hands flew over controls, coaxing power from reserves she'd sworn not to touch. In that moment, the camaraderie bound them tighter than any hull. Jax's relentless fixes, Lena's vigilant warnings, her own unyielding push forward. Humans defying the universe's decline, one desperate choice at a time. Then, a surge, blue-white energy flooding the conduits, the nebula recoiling as if burned. The core stabilized, humming back to life at 67%. But as the ship pulled free, trailing wisps of decay, Ilara saw the cost on the scanners. A rift left in their wake, widening slowly. The signal they'd chased? Faint now, distorted. They'd bought time, but the universe remembered the affront. And the colony? They'd limp on, scarred but unbroken. For now. Elena gripped the console's edge, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The void outside the viewport twisted like molten glass, the anomaly pulsing with erratic energy that clawed at their shields. "Raj talked to me," she said, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. 12 hours ago, their gambit to redirect the anomaly's core had seemed brilliant, human ingenuity at its finest, threading quantum tethers through the event horizon without firing a shot. But now the tethers were fraying, and the pulse was accelerating, threatening to swallow the nearest star system whole. Raj hunched over his makeshift panel, fingers flying across holographic displays that flickered like dying fireflies. "It's not holding, Captain. The anomaly's adapting faster than we predicted. Those Vexery envoys were right. It's not just a rift, it's alive, learning from us." His usual wit had dulled to a grim edge, but he shot her a half-smile anyway. "Guests declining their war council invite didn't make us the galaxy's favorites." Behind them, Lyra, the Vexery defector who joined their ragtag crew after the council's collapse, paced the cramped bridge. Her iridescent scales shimmered under the red emergency lights, betraying her agitation. Cautious by nature, she'd argued against the tether plan from the start, favoring evacuation protocols that would have abandoned billions. "We should sever the links now," she urged, her voice a melodic hiss. "Before it pulls us in. Your human stubbornness will doom us all." Elena shook her head, eyes locked on the viewport where tendrils of distorted space reached out like grasping fingers. The cost was already mounting. Their scout drones gone, comms silent from the Allied fleets who'd scattered after humanity's refusal to escalate to weapons. No empire, no heroes. Just them, three souls against the unraveling fabric of reality. We cut those tethers and the anomaly expands unchecked. Billions die Lyra. We came this far because we chose adaptation over annihilation. A shudder rocked the ship, sparks erupting from a bulkhead. Raj cursed under his breath, rerouting power from life support to the stabilizers. The air grew thick, recyclers whining in protest. "Shields at 20%. If we don't stabilize the core flux in the next 10 minutes, we're paced." He glanced at Elena, his dark eyes reflecting the chaos. "Any more of that human grit left, or are we calling it?" She straightened, mind racing through the fragments of data they'd scavenged from ancient probes, relics of a long-forgotten human expansion before the decline. The anomaly wasn't random, it mirrored their own tech, a warped echo of warp drives gone sentient. "Mirror it back," Elena said suddenly, the idea crystallizing amid the alarms. "Raj, invert the tether polarity. Make it think we're part of it, not fighting." Lyra haltet her pajink, mandibles clicking in disbelief. "That's suicide. You'd entangle our drive signature." "Exactly." Elena met her gaze, unyielding. "We've declined war but not existence. If it learns from us, let's teach it harmony instead of conflict." Raj nodded, already adjusting the code, his hands a blur. The ship groaned as the tethers hummed to life in reverse, feeding a loop of stabilized energy into the void. For a heartbeat, the anomaly stilled, its pulses syncing with their rhythm. Then, a low vibration built, the tendrils retracting like a beast recoiling from its reflection. But victory didn't come clean. The entanglement pulled at their hull, metal creaking as the ship's frame warped under the strain. Elena braced against the console, tasting blood from a bitten lip. Alarms peaked, then faded to a wary silence. On the viewport, the distortion smoothed, the star system's light steadying for the first time in days. Raj slumped back, wiping his brow. It's stabilizing. But we're drifting off course. That loop cost us our NAV core. Lyra approached the viewport, her caution giving way to a tentative awe. You humans? Always bending the unbreakable. She placed a scaled hand on Elena's shoulder, a rare gesture of camaraderie. Yet as the ship limped toward the recovering fleet, Elena knew the price. Their vessel crippled, the galaxy forever altered by a choice that had nearly ended it all. The universe had declined existence's easy path, but in the quiet aftermath, survival felt like the first step toward something new. The bridge hummed with the low thrum of failing engines, stars streaking past the viewport like fading embers. Elena gripped the armrests of her command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. Jax hunched over the console, fingers flying across the holographic display, sweat beading on his forehead. Mira stood behind him, her voice steady but edged with the caution that had kept them alive this long. The warp field's destabilizing. If we push it now, we might tear a hole straight through the anomaly. Elena nodded, her jaw set. The Xylari fleet loomed in the rear sensors. Those crystalline ships, their hulls pulsing with aggressive energy signatures, had chased them across 3 sectors. The aliens saw the anomaly as an enemy to conquer, a void storm devouring systems, and they demanded humanity join the fray or perish. But Elena's crew had declined, choosing instead to probe its edges, to understand before striking. Now, with their own ship, the Endeavor, leaking atmosphere and power, that choice hung by a thread. Jax, talk to me, Elena said, her voice cutting through the alarms. He didn't look up, his witty grin absent for once. I've rerouted the auxiliary reactors. Barely enough juice to punch through. But the anomaly's pulling harder, like it's hungry. One wrong vector and we're the main course. Mira placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes flicking to the tactical overlay. The Xylari were closing, their weapons priming for a barrage that would end this standoff. We can't outrun them. But remember the readings from Epsilon, the anomaly's not random. It's a feedback loop, amplifying aggression. Their war calls are feeding it. Elena's mind raced, piecing together the fragments they'd gathered. No grand speeches, just the grit of survival. Then we don't fight. We starve it. She leaned forward. Jax, invert the deflector array. Channel their incoming fire back into the storm's core, let their own fury collapse it. Jax paused, then barked a laugh, sharp and relieved. You're insane. But yeah, that could work. His hands blurred, recalibrating the shields to reflect energy rather than absorb. Mira monitored the flux, her cautious adjustments fine-tuning the beam's focus. The first Xylari volley hit like a thunderclap, blue lances of plasma slamming into the Endeavor's hull. The ship shuddered, lights flickering, but Jax held the line. Reflectors up. Firing back. The redirected energy arced toward the anomaly, a brilliant azure spear piercing its swirling maw. The void storm roiled, contracting as if stung, its tendrils lashing out wildly. More Xylari ships fired, drawn into the fray, their assaults funneled through the Endeavor's improvised lens. The anomaly screamed in sensor feedback, a cosmic wail as its loop broke, aggression turning inward. Elena watched the viewport, the storm imploding in a cascade of light. The Xylari fleet scattered, their crystalline forms fracturing under the backlash. Silence fell, broken only by the settling groan of the ship. But victory tasted bittersweet. Mira scanned the debris. The anomaly's gone, but half their fleet's lost. And ours? She glanced at the engineering readouts. Jax slumped back, wiping his brow. Engines are toast. We're drifting, Captain. No warp for weeks. Elena stood, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. The stars stabilized outside, peaceful now, but the galaxy would remember humanity's refusal, not as weakness but as the spark that quelled the storm. Scars remained, Alliances shattered, systems scarred. Yet in the quiet, camaraderie bound them tighter. "We've got repairs to make," she said simply. "And stories to tell." As the Endeavor limped toward the nearest outpost, the universe breathed easier, its existence reaffirmed not by war, but by the quiet ingenuity of those who chose another path.